If we're working with this theory that triggers make our buttons big and bright and sensitive, we're going to deal with the triggers when we can, but then we're also going to do what we can to take care of our buttons and make them calmer and darker and less pushable. And I got to tell you, this is a very real thing. Several years ago, I went away for like a 3 or 4 day silent meditation retreat. And when I came home, I was like the freaking Dalai Mama. Like, I could handle whatever my kids, they were making a mess, they were, talking back, whatever it was. And I was like, I'm good. I got this. And it lasted like 24 hours and then it was gone. And I'm not suggesting we all need to go away on meditation retreats, but there are things we can do, active steps we can take to reduce these buttons. And look, most of these fall sort of under the realm of self-care, which is a phrase I don't really love because I think it gets overused. So I tend to think of it as shit you need to do so you don't lose your shit with your kids. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, you know what I'm about to say, right? So let's hear. What are some of the things I'm thinking about when I talk about self-care? Sleep, thank you. That's like a huge one, right? I have a whole chapter on sleep. What else? Exercise. So exercise is amazing because as the tension builds up in your body, when you exercise, like you're getting these stress hormones out of your body, you're letting go of the tension, and you guys will see me. I live just on the other side of Crystal Lake. I have these like walks I do where I go on these loops around Crystal Lake because sometimes I just got to get out of the house and like go for a walk, and that's a big way of getting the tension out of my body. What else? Yeah, please. Hi. Hi. What's up? Breathing. I mean, this is another huge one. Breathing is like hacking into your nervous system and basically sending a message to your body saying, it's okay, you can calm down. Because if a saber-toothed tiger is actually like running at you, you don't stop to take deep breaths. You just keep running. Okay? Other ones are slowing down. For many people, hurrying is a major trigger because you're sending a message to your body and your nervous system like something's wrong, go faster, go faster. So when you can intentionally slow down, that will calm you down. I want you guys to start noticing how often you are multitasking and try not to do it as much. I know, right? Okay, mom over here is like laughing at me like, you gotta be freaking kidding, lady. Oh, it's the phone, she got her phone. That's okay, it's all right, it's all good. So the word I use for this is single tasking, doing one thing at a time. And like I said, this is not the sexiest thing. I'm not telling you to go out and get pedicures every day, although if you can, that's great. But it is super effective. So let's talk about multitasking first of all. This is something that our society loves. We love to talk about multitasking. I mean, how many times have you like read a job description and it says ability to multitask required? And I used to be like, oh, I can do that. I'm a great multitasker. This is the job for me. And now I know that they're asking us to do something that we are physiologically not capable of doing. When we think we are multitasking, here's what we're doing instead. One of two things. One is our body is doing something, our brain is doing something else, and we have no awareness of what our body is doing. So the classic example is you get in the car, you start driving, you arrive at your destination, and you have no idea how you got there, right? We've all done it. So our body is doing this one thing, this actually fairly complicated thing of driving a car, but our brain is totally off somewhere else. So that's one thing we're doing when we think we're multitasking, is fundamentally not paying attention to something that our body is engaged in. The other thing we're doing is called task switching. This is what researchers call it. So instead of doing two things at once, we're actually jumping back and forth between these different things. And our body is going back and forth, but our brains often can't keep up. And so there's a lag there. And in that lag, we are far more likely to screw something up, to drop something, break something, lose something, put down our keys, we don't know where they are, say something we don't mean. So that increases our stress, right? So when I talk about stress, which is a major trigger for lots of folks, when we're stressed, we're far more likely to scream at our kids, right? So when I talk about stress, what I mean is the thought, belief, or perception that we cannot handle whatever is going on. And the more you have going on at the same time, the more likely it's going to be that you think you can't handle whatever it is. Even if you can, right? Even if you would stop doing whatever you're doing, do just one thing, you might believe that you can't handle it. So multitasking increases our stress and makes it more likely that we're going to lose it with our kids. And I will challenge you to notice, the next time you're doing something and your kid comes in and you try to keep doing whatever you're doing and interact with your child, especially if one of the things you're doing is staring at your phone, that is like primo high-risk territory for losing it with your kids. And the other major sort of enemy of our focus is our children. right? So how can we make it more likely that we're going to single task when we are around our kids? So my number one piece of advice to parents is either be with your kids or ignore them. I'm serious. Anything in the middle is bound to fall apart. And so here's what this looks like in the middle is when we're like, I'm just going to shoot off a few quick emails, or I'm going to work from home, or, lots of us are lucky and we have, flexible jobs maybe, so you can work from home, or you can leave early to take your kid to the pediatrician or go to a soccer game, but the expectation is that you're still available, right? So you can answer these texts and emails. That's a terrible situation. And I realize it's a bind some of us are stuck in, but try to avoid that at all costs. So if you're home working with your kids, as I was today because I had this sick kid, I would set her up and I'd be like, okay, you watch this TV show for an hour and I'm going to do work, and then when that's done, I'm going to come and we can play a card game or read a book or something. We'll do that for half an hour, and then I need you to do something else so I can go work. Because I find that when I'm sitting there with my laptop in front of her and trying to answer her questions, go back and forth with emails and everything, I type the wrong things, I get frustrated with her because I'm trying to stare at this sentence and she's trying to get my attention. It ends poorly. So how do we do this? We have to train ourselves and train our children. And when my daughters were very young, like babies, my husband was like, let her play there. We'll go in the other room. And I'm like, she's only a baby. She's fine. Like, she's playing on the floor, rolling around. She doesn't care. But my husband was right. Like, let them play alone. And if they're happy playing alone, stay out of it. Do not get involved. Do not go over there and ask questions. Don't be like, oh, this is great. Tell me more. Like, back away. Let them play. They will come at you when they are ready, right? So one of the great strategies for ignoring your kids is when they're happy, just leave them alone. Don't get involved in their play. Screen time is a trigger, right? Let's just be honest. With my kids in general, if they're not sick or not on a plane, if I let them have more than 40 minutes of screen time at a time, they turn into little monsters. It's a trigger for them. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is that some of the things you may be doing, and I promise I'll come back to the screen time, some of the things you may be doing to try to manage your triggers might not be so helpful. So alcohol, that's not going to help you, right? I know it sucks, but it's the truth, which is that alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. And so the first part of our central nervous system that goes offline when we drink is our prefrontal cortex. So this is the part of our brain that should care about shit. It's the adulting part of our brain. So it goes offline, so we're more chill. But then the problem is that's also the part of our brain that we need to keep us from losing it with our kids. So if that part of our brain is offline, we're far more likely to lose it. Also, alcohol screws up your sleep. It just does. You don't get as much high quality sleep when you've been drinking because your prefrontal cortex goes offline, and then as the effects of the alcohol wear off overnight, the parts of your brain come back online and mess with your sleep cycles. Yeah.
Like one glass of wine? Or?
What's the limit? It depends. It really depends. Can we all just agree that mornings are a shit show? Okay. So first of all, remember that this is a period of your life. It's not always going to be this hard. That's the first step. The second step is, what can you get done ahead of time so you don't have to do it in the morning? So my kids, we pick out our clothes the night before. I don't know why they can successfully pick out clothes when they're exhausted in the evening, but they can't do it in the morning, but it's just the way it is. So we pick out clothes the night before. I get up at 5 a.m. and make lunches and have my own little quiet time, because if I have to interact with my kids before coffee, that ends up poorly for everyone. So I get up and I do some of their lunches. They do the rest of their lunches because I'm working on having them do their lunches. And I get as much done of my stuff so that by the time they get up, my husband and I are showered. And we're like ready to engage in them. Look, honestly, it sucks. I don't want to get up at 5 a.m., but it's how I can get through the morning without screaming at my kids, and that's much more pleasant. So I'm up, I've taken care of myself, and by the time they get up, I can kind of usher them through the morning and get out the day. But I think really thinking about what can you do ahead of time. Do you want to make their lunches the night before and just stick it in the fridge? I've known some parents that they have their kids sleep in their clothes for the next day. Because let's be honest, most of our kids' clothes basically look like pajamas these days. So what do you need to do? I know, and the most brilliant thing I've ever heard, I can't take credit from this advice, I heard it from a friend of a friend. He had his kids do drills on the weekend where they practiced packing their backpacks and putting them on their shoes. And he had them do it like over and over again on the weekends until they got really good at it. I think that's amazing. That's amazing. That is brilliant.